Aaron McLaughlin here again, and I've been thinking a lot about the situation going on with all the anxiety and fear around having a vax, or whatever you might call it. And I'm reminded of a story which I want to share with you. Because of the business I've been in, which is helping people to deal with quite chronic situations or very unusual situations, and having studied psychoneuroimmunology, hypnosis, psychology, all these different things for quite a long time, since '96 really, a woman came to see me a long time ago, and it was quite funny. She calls me up and says, "I've got to see you because I've got this problem, I've got to have some dental work." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "Well, my problem is that I have this incredible fear of anything to do with surgery or dentist or anything." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "And I'm a massive bleeder. So so there's this major concern that if I get under the blah, 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 I'll just bleed crazily." I said, "No, okay." And she said, "And also I'm a smoker, which means I've got to stop smoking before they do the surgery. The problem is the surgery is really important because I've got a lot of, infection and yada yada." And I said, "Oh, okay, so there's a lot going on there." And she said, "Yes." And she says, "And I've booked in the surgery because I have to have it done." I said, "Okay, when is that?" And she said, "In 3 days." So, long story short, she came in and she was truly freaking out about this surgery. And for so many reasons. The last time, even to go in, her husband had to literally carry her in and put her in the chair, and she had to be sedated because of her fear. So the long and short of it was and she'd been smoking all of her life. She didn't talk like this because she'd been smoking so long, and she had to stop. I can't actually understand how stopping 3 days before the surgery would make any difference, to be honest. But it was probably to do with the smoking following. Anyway, so it was what we called a pre-op surgery consultation session, and it was quite long. And what we did was we had to work on a lot of stuff all at the same time. So we had to work on the anxiety, we had to work on the smoking, we had to work on this bleeding thing. And the thing that I want to say about this was it was just so fascinating, because in hypnotherapy or hypnosis, there is this protocol or process where we talk to the body, and we can do that in many different ways. One of is we use finger. We get to help the person to relax into a really deep state, and then we talk to their body and ask, is it okay to have a conversation? And people on the outside, they're going, "Oh man, this is just mental stuff." But having done it hundreds of times, if not more, it's a very real phenomenon. And so, and in a way to kind of explain that would be, how you're sitting in a passenger seat and you're driving down the road and someone's just not braking fast enough, and you find yourself involuntarily putting on the brakes. Well, it's because, as in kinesiology, there's a kind of like a muscle response. There's kind of like a "I'm going to die" response, or "this is really good" response. So there's these responses that go on that we kind of have no conscious ability to control unless we have the control. And idiomotor responses to questions is one form of that. We might find also that we respond unconsciously to non-verbal cues from people. For example, someone might look angry and we suddenly feel our body going like this. A phobia is a really good example of a non-verbal, unconscious. So if someone thinks, or someone mentions the word spider and someone goes like this, they've obviously got a phobia. So we already run these what you'd call idiomotor yes-no kind of sequences, and that's what a lot of kinesiology or muscle testing, or whatever you might like to call it, is based on. Some call it intuition, some call it, it's a scientific fact. It's actually built into the body. Anyway, long and short of it, we're talking to the body, and I said to it, "Do you understand this, what's coming up?" No. So I had no idea. So, okay, in 3 days there's this thing called surgery. Are you aware that this is coming up? No. So the body wasn't aware. Well, that was quite fascinating piece of. Anyway, so the body wasn't aware that the surgery was coming up. So imagine this for a moment. You turn up to surgery, your body's not aware of it, and suddenly someone's pulling all your teeth out. So if I don't know that something's going to happen, I can't. Pre-warned is pre-armed. It's kind of a military kind of sound to that, but it's kind of a well-known quote. It's like pre-warned, pre-armed. So it means that I can pre-adjust, I can adapt, I can get flexibility, I can investigate, I can do all these different things. I can even have a conversation about what's coming up. So anyway, I said, yeah, well, actually, this is coming up, and it's kind of a major scenario because there's a lot. There's a lot of infection in the mouth, and I said, did you know about the infection? He goes, yeah, there's infection, and we've been trying to fight it, and yada yada. So we had this kind of conversation. I said, so what this fighting, for whatever the smoking was getting in the way of the ability to fight it properly, because it's just constantly this toxin going into the mouth. A lot of people who smoke apparently can get quite bad problems happening in their mouth and their tongue and their throat and their cheeks. Obviously, their cheeks. So anywhere that there's smoke and all the 200 odd chemicals that are in it, the average tailored cigarette will contain. So fundamentally, we had this conversation, and I said, well, buddy, do you also know that, historically, there's been a situation where you've kind of bled a lot? And he goes, yep. And I said, and so we kind of got to a deeper level of, so that we could actually have a proper conversation, like with words. I said, so if you remember back, what's got shock? It was just immediate shock. Don't know what's going on. And so the bleeding is a process of trying to heal, is trying to almost cleanse this thing that's going on that it doesn't understand. So it's all that, the doctor or surgeon will be able to explain this a lot. Even someone who understands the physiology will be better than me. But no one understands the physiology better than the physiology you're talking to. So I said to talk to this woman's body, and I said, listen, historically, so we understand this. So what you're telling me is that a lot of this bleeding is because you were in shock. Yes, definitely. So let me ask you, if you had known that this was coming up, would you have felt the same? I said, no, if I had known that. Yeah. So seriously, the clean and clear logic of this conversation was that when you know what's coming up, even at the deep subconscious physiological aspect, you can start to bypass the flight or fight, the freeze, flight or fight, the stress response, the whatever you do, the response you have to whatever's coming on all of a sudden. So the physiology, we just think it's a machine. The kind of unfortunate and not necessarily generalized fault of the medical paradigm is it's taken all of our personal ability to have a conversation with our physiology and understand symptomology, understand psychology. It's just taken it away and given it to some professional who's got a PhD and can look through the DSM-5 or whatever it is and say, yeah, you've got, and give you 5 different versions of what apparently you are, which has nothing to do with who you are, really. It's just a bunch of labels, which in the end will dissociate you completely from what you're actually experiencing because, now I've got a crutch, wicked. Anyway, so fundamentally, had a talk with this body, and I said, listen, in 3 days, you're going in for this thing, and blah, 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 and what we need to do is I need to just take you through it. And he goes, can you do that? I said, sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it through it, but I'm going to help you to relax a little bit deeper, and I'm going to actually, whenever you learn something, I said to it, whenever you learn something that you did really well, like riding a bike, can you ride a bike? And she said, yes, I can ride a bike. I said, so it was a bit tough to start off with, but you wanted to learn. Oh yeah, because I want to learn because it was so much fun. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to picture that, and in my previous little video I made, I talked about anxiety and how there's a little strategy to help with that. So I said to the body, look, if you were to picture yourself like an hour and a half, 2 hours after this thing that's going to happen in 3 days, and you were to picture yourself smiling, as if you've just learned to ride a bike. She goes, ooh. So he's like, now there's a thing, there's a wonderful doctor named Dr. Ernest Rossi. Look it up, ernestrossi.com. Him and his partner, Catherine, they have written numerous books. He's a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a medical doctor, a hypnotherapist, and one of the people who trained for the longest and worked for the longest with a profoundly intuitive and master of hypnosis called Milton Erickson, who was also a medical doctor, a psychologist, psychiatrist, and a bit of a nutcase. We could get into a whole story about his life, which is just profoundly fascinating. So Ernest Rossi was talking about this concept that if you talk to the body, if you have this conversation, one thing to bring into it is novelty. I think it's quite interesting that they call it the novel coronavirus, because even using the word novelty, you go, oh. So there's 3 phases of creating new neural pathways. So the fundamental thing about when learning to ride a bike is there's the novelty. Oh, and if you remember another little video I made earlier, I talked about hypnosis. So self-hypnosis is a lot about novelty. Oh, fixed attention on a novel experience. So the novel experience is I'm getting on the bike. Wow, fixed attention. Oh. The second part of what Ernest Rossi talks about is numinosum, which actually means curiosity, fascination, engagement, those sorts of things. Now, when that happens, we open up our mind to possibility, as opposed to fear. When we go into fear, everything closes down, we become myopic, we go into flight or fight, we look into the future, we imagine shit happening. Technical term, forgive me. So fundamentally, so that we have this experience of numinosum. So, and in numinosum, curiosity, fascination, we suspend disbelief, second part of hypnosis or self-hypnosis. Third part, neurogenesis. So neurogenesis always follows. So if we have a novel experience, we get fascinated and curious, our mind is open to the possibility of creating new neural pathways. Now, what happens on a bike? When you're learning to ride a bike, fixed attention, novelty. Fascination, curiosity, numinosum, which is suspension of disbelief as well. Third part, neurogenesis, opening up, and we repeat. We repeat because it feels good. Neurogenesis, new neural pathways, feels great, so we keep repeating because blah, blah, blah. So that's how the kind of hypnotic aspect of this process. So I said to the body, can you do this? Let's play with this. So we went into the future, and actually we went back first. We went back and we resolved something that happened around some previous... She'd had a really traumatic experience as a child with surgery. So we cleaned that up, went back as the older, wiser her. The first thing we said is, did you survive? And her inner child said, oh yeah, I did. Anyway, it's a lot of fun doing what we do here. So then we went into the future and we literally ran 20 or 30 scenarios of different ways of dealing with this thing coming up. And one of them we dressed as a clown suit. So you're turning up and you're in a clown suit. She says, I hate clowns. Good! I said, good! Everyone hates clowns, but they're the most wonderful thing. They really are. I do medical clowning, by the way. I go into rest homes and help old people, retired people, whatever, in rest home hospitals. I do work at Windsor Care up in where is it? Shirley in Christchurch. That's where I live, Christchurch. Anyway, so lovely work. Such a privilege to work and to put on the little red nose, dress up in old-time clothing and sing stupid songs and make lots of mistakes and fail heaps. One thing we all need to learn more is to stop taking ourselves so seriously and learn to fail. Something that children, pre-verbal children, just do naturally. Make mistakes, fail, laugh, get up, keep doing it again. So, this woman ran so many things. I ran them forwards with her and I ran them backwards. Really weird. I can explain that at another time. But the fundamental thing was that we gave her 100, let's say 10, 10 different ways of thinking about this thing called this upcoming surgery. All of them ended with her, at the end, smiling for one reason, and this was in my previous video, one reason, and that is because it's done. That's the fundamental thing. Not because, I'm just so amazing at what I do and I'm a great success, or it went to shit, technical term. No, it's just done. And so the reptilian, flight or flight, whatever you want to call it, subsides, and so we can start working on the actual stuff. And that's in the previous video about anxiety. So fundamentally, why am I talking about this? Oh, she called me up the day later because she could talk. Here's the thing. So she gets into the chair, and for one thing, she walked in there on her own. She hadn't smoked since she'd seen me. I didn't actually understand why she hadn't smoked since she'd seen me, because we hardly even talked about smoking, but it was so funny. Anyway, so I mean, that's the power of creating a really compelling outcome statement. So if we create a very compelling and we align a lot of values and meaningful reasons to not do something, little glitch in the mainframe then. So when we have a very compelling future statement, then what happens is it's almost like dominoes falling. It allows the unconscious mind to open up and to tap into all the resources and all the reasons and all often the unspoken causes, reasons, whatever, for this compelling outcome to occur. It also means that we will filter the stuff that is not required out, and we will attend to the things that we really need, similar to learning to drive a car or ride a bike. We zone out of all the stuff that isn't required, so that's the fixed attention, suspension of disbelief, and then we repeat the process. Now, the wonderful thing about the subconscious is that when it learns something really new, it will unconsciously repeat the process. And what we now know with sleep research is that it does it while we sleep. So while we sleep, really important, get your head on the pillow by 10. Don't worry about anything, and don't even think about sleep. It's pointless because you won't know when you're there. Just lie there and rest. That's the fundamental. So fundamentally, get into bed, rest. Don't think about it, sleep. Who cares? You won't know when you're there. And then your brain and body will just wash, cleanse, and integrate all the stuff that it's been learning. Now, so she walked in, husband's going, what's going on here? She just walked in, got in the chair, and she says, righto, away you go. And so she had not a general, but she had a local, lots of local, and didn't feel a thing when it went in. And the doctor was quite surprised because she didn't bleed. And so all the way through this, quite invasive, like she's getting all her teeth out, literally all of her teeth out. The doctor, the dental surgeon kept saying, "Why, you're not bleeding," and she's kind of internally laughing because her body's just going, "No, because I don't need to, because I was told that it's not necessary because we're not in shock. We know what's happening." The thing was, she was told that she wouldn't be able to eat for 48 hours to 72 hours. She ate the next day, she had breakfast the next day, woke up. I mean, breakfast meaning she couldn't chew anything, she was just having yogurt or stuff, but even then they were saying you wouldn't be able to do it. Long and short of it, her healing was remarkably quick. The doctor kept scratching his head, and she hadn't smoked since. Why am I telling you this? There is so much anxiety out there, so many concerns, and so many stories corroborated scientifically on both sides, and we know what I'm talking about. The thing that I want to say is at some point, maybe through whatever reasons, political or otherwise, there might be a situation where we have a choice and yet our life is going to become remarkably unlivable if we don't choose in a certain socially acceptable way. Great. If my body has the ability to stop bleeding, if my body has the ability to change its epigenetic response to the context, if my body is able to talk and recognize that something's coming up that it wasn't really aware was even coming, and then to prep, here's the thing I learned a long time ago. A lot of people say, well, you can't go in, the cells or the nucleus is too small to go into, even with some microscopes, something like that. But right now, I bet everyone here can picture what a coronavirus looks like. Everyone here can picture what a syringe looks like. Everyone here can picture all the images that we begin with, RNA, DNA, all these different things. Everyone can picture in their mind a nucleus. Everyone can picture maybe a strand of DNA, which they could give a nice colour. Everyone can picture proteins. Look it up on the internet. Google proteins and look it up and notice what it looks like. Google RNA and notice what it looks like. Google the new RNA on the alternative websites maybe and notice what that looks like, and then talk to your body. Get yourself into a relaxed state. And I can make a couple of videos about how to do that really quickly, and talk to your body and tell it, okay, so at some point this might be coming up, or at some point I might breathe this by mistake, or at some point this is there. Were you aware of that? And you'll get no. Generally you'll get no, because the body's too busy doing what it's doing. It's beating the heart, it's doing 100 billion things a second. So what we need to do is get into a really relaxed state. We need to say, listen, There's this other thing. And we're hearing a lot about it. And I need to see, because I can picture myself in the future smiling because it's done, because it's over. And I'm healthy, and I'm well, and I'm breathing, and I'm eating, and I'm flexible, and all those lovely things. But at the moment, we're constantly thrown the opposite. It's called a nocebo. You've heard of placebo, meaning a positive mental state in order to create or generate a positive internal physical state. Well, a nocebo is exactly the same, but opposite. So if we keep seeing COVID, 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 and it's COVID, COVID, COVID in any media, and all of it is negative, all of it. And it's been repeated that we're either out of control because of COVID, or we're out of control because someone's telling us what we should do about this thing that we're out of control about. So it doesn't matter, we're out of control. So does that work? Imagine what your immune system's doing when it's constantly getting repeated suspension of disbelief, fixed attention, repetition of a non-stop communication about something that we have no control about, apparently have no control over. Well, I'm saying check it out inside and ask, can I start generating some adaptive, reflexive, responsive control in this world with respect to my environment? And your answer will most definitely start to go yes. So remember the story with the woman. Remember the story with the teeth, with all of that, and all of these things she had to deal with. But fundamentally, what did we start with? I asked her one thing. Ask yourself every day, what do I want? Not what do I not want. Not how do I not want to live. Because it's like, don't think of a black cat. What do I want? I want health, happiness, well-being. I want to have a sense of self-control. I want to communicate with my body so it knows what to do. Well, the only way that's going to happen is you need to start the conversation. And there was a story, and I've got hundreds of stories, around people who have started that conversation and literally changed something that medical, mechanical science would say, yeah, you're good luck, buddy. Well, fundamentally, I've got hundreds of experiences, not only my own, but also many, many, many extremely courageous people who have done this. And the science is backing this up. Psychoneuroimmunology, mind-body connection. Bruce Lipton, as an example, a pioneer in this field. Aaron McLaughlin, thanks for listening. Bit longer this time, a little bit of glitch in the middle. Never mind, we get round it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate.